What if I told you that the world's most powerful country doesn't conquer nations with soldiers alone? That there exists a secret, shadowy class of professionals whose job is to enslave countries with debt, and if they refuse, the jackals are sent in to assassinate their leaders. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the confessed life of John Perkins. In the late 1960s, John Perkins was a bright young man recruited by the NSA, the National Security Agency. He was then funneled to a private corporation, Chas T. Main, a Boston-based consulting firm. But this wasn't a normal job interview. He was vetted by a mysterious woman who posed psychological questions, testing his morality, his greed, and his susceptibility to manipulation and to sex. They weren't just hiring an economist, they were recruiting an economic hitman. His job was simple and sinister. He would identify developing countries rich in resources, like oil in Ecuador or a strategic canal in Panama. He'd then convince their leaders to accept enormous loans for massive infrastructure projects, power plants, highways, ports, projects that were often overpriced and built by US corporations. The catch? The loans were so large the country could never repay them. This was the trap. Once the country was drowning in debt, the United States would call in the favor, cheap oil, military bases, political support at the UN, or control over their natural resources. It was a form of financial imperialism. But what happens when a patriotic leader refuses the bribe and the debt? Perkins says that's when the jackals are unleashed. Covert operatives, often from the CIA, specialized in regime change through assassination. Perkins names two presidents whose deaths he directly connects to this system. In Ecuador, President Jaime Roldos was a young, charismatic leader. He campaigned on a promise to protect Ecuador's oil wealth for its own people, not for US corporations. He defied the economic hitmen. On May 24, 1981, his plane crashed in a remote mountainous region under highly suspicious circumstances. The official report blamed pilot error, but Perkins and many investigators believe it was the work of the jackals, a bomb on the plane to send a message to any leader who would dare challenge the system. Just months later, in Panama, a similar fate befell a man who was supposed to be a US ally. General Omar Torrijos had just negotiated the Torrijos-Carter treaties, which would return control of the Panama Canal from the US to Panama. But Torrijos was becoming a nationalist hero in Latin America and was seen as a potential threat. He was known to be paranoid about plane bombings. On July 31, 1981, his military plane exploded in mid-air and crashed. Again, the official story was an accident. But Perkins, who knew and admired Torrijos, is convinced it was another jackal assassination, a warning to keep leaders in line. Haunted by guilt and the deaths of Roldos and Torrijos, Perkins eventually left the game. He struggled for years before finally publishing his explosive memoir, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, in 2004. It became an international bestseller, exposing this dark underbelly of global geopolitics. He confessed that economic hitmen are more prevalent today than ever, working through complex financial institutions, trapping entire nations in a cycle of debt and dependency. The story of John Perkins forces us to ask a difficult question. How much of today's global economy is built on genuine development, and how much is built on a hidden system of debt and coercion? It's a story about how empires truly operate in the modern age, not just with tanks and troops, but with briefcases and bank balances. What do you think? Is this system still in place today? Let us know in the comments below. If this story shocked you, like this video, subscribe to the Money Files, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into the hidden forces that shape our world.